The global truck market just got hit with a reality check no one was ready for, because Foton has officially pulled the curtain back on a super cheap pickup truck that is making established brands extremely uncomfortable. This isn't a concept, it isn't a rumor, and it definitely isn't priced for wealthy buyers only. This truck is designed to be brutally affordable, aggressively simple, and shockingly capable, and that's exactly why everyone is suddenly paying attention. Foton isn't trying to compete with luxury pickups packed with screens and gimmicks. They're attacking the one thing the entire industry abandoned years ago: price. While Ford, Toyota, and GM keep pushing trucks past the $40,000 and $50,000 mark, Foton just dropped a pickup that costs less than some motorcycles, and that alone changes the entire conversation. This truck is built for people who actually need a truck: farmers, contractors, small business owners, delivery drivers, and buyers who are tired of being priced out of the market. The design is simple and rugged on purpose: squared-off lines, a tall stance, steel wheels, and no unnecessary fluff. This thing looks like it's ready to work straight out of the factory, not sit in a mall parking lot. The bed is usable, the ground clearance is real, and the body is clearly engineered to survive abuse instead of social media photo shoots. It's not trying to look premium, it's trying to last. Under the hood, Foton went with proven, low-cost powertrains that focus on reliability and fuel efficiency instead of flashy horsepower numbers. Small displacement engines, manual transmission options, and minimal electronics mean fewer things to break and lower repair costs long-term. This is the kind of truck you can fix, not the kind that locks you out with software errors. And in markets where fuel prices are brutal, that efficiency suddenly becomes a massive selling point. Inside, it's exactly what you'd expect from a truck built for affordability, but that's not a bad thing. Physical buttons, basic infotainment, durable materials, and a layout that makes sense. No giant screens controlling your air vents, no subscription features, no overcomplicated tech that inflates the price. It's functional, honest, and refreshingly old school in the best way possible. Here's where things get really uncomfortable for the big brands. This truck proves that affordable pickups are still possible. The reason we don't see them isn't because they can't be built, it's because automakers chose profit margins over accessibility. Foton just exposed that truth, and now consumers are asking the dangerous question: why am I paying triple the price for a badge and a touchscreen? In emerging markets, this truck is already being seen as a game changer, but the shockwaves don't stop there. If vehicles like this start gaining popularity or entering new regions, especially price-sensitive markets, it puts massive pressure on legacy automakers to justify their pricing strategies. You can only blame regulations and inflation for so long before buyers start looking elsewhere. What makes this reveal even more explosive is the timing. Truck sales are slowing, inventory is piling up, and buyers are getting more price-conscious than ever. Dropping a super cheap pickup into this environment is like lighting a match in a room full of gasoline. Dealers are nervous, competitors are quiet, and consumers are suddenly realizing that the truck market doesn't have to be this expensive. And the biggest question now isn't whether this Foton pickup will sell, it's how long the rest of the industry can ignore it before they're forced to respond. Because once buyers see what's possible at this price point, it becomes very hard to go back to paying inflated prices for trucks that don't actually do more. And as more details emerge about where this truck could expand next, the real disruption might only just be getting started, because the moment affordable trucks return to the spotlight, everything we think we know about the pickup market begins to crack. And that's where things get even more interesting as we start looking at how this could ripple across the entire global auto industry. Because once a low-cost truck proves demand at scale, the pricing bubble becomes impossible to defend. Automakers have trained buyers to accept outrageous prices by slowly removing basic options and rebranding them as premium upgrades, and Foton just walked in and reversed that logic overnight. Instead of asking what features can be added to justify a higher price, this truck asks what features are actually necessary to get the job done. This is especially threatening to compact and mid-size pickups that are already struggling to justify their existence. Trucks like the Maverick and Santa Cruz were supposed to be the affordable alternatives, but even those have crept upward in price, with trims and packages pushing them into territory that feels anything but budget-friendly. Now imagine a buyer seeing a Foton pickup that costs dramatically less and still does truck things without excuses. That comparison alone exposes how bloated the market has become. Another detail people aren't talking about enough is how modular this truck is. Foton designed it with adaptability in mind, meaning it can be configured for cargo hauling, agricultural use, utility fleets, or even basic personal transport without redesigning the entire platform. That flexibility is gold for small businesses and governments who need durability and low ownership costs more than luxury branding. Fleet buyers especially are watching this very closely. And then there's the elephant in the room, electric trucks. While legacy brands keep pushing expensive electric pickups that most working-class buyers can't afford, Foton's strategy highlights a massive disconnect between industry goals and real-world needs. Not everyone wants a $60,000 electric truck with limited charging infrastructure. Many buyers just want something affordable, reliable, and easy to maintain. And this pickup hits that nerve perfectly. The reaction online has been telling. Comments are flooded with people asking why trucks like this aren't available everywhere, why American and Japanese brands stopped making truly cheap pickups, and how long consumers have been getting ripped off. That kind of conversation is dangerous for automakers because once trust starts cracking, brand loyalty disappears fast. What makes this even more disruptive is that Foton isn't new or untested. They already build commercial vehicles, work trucks, and industrial equipment used daily around the world. This isn't a startup making promises. This is a manufacturer with factories, supply chains, and experience producing vehicles at scale. That gives this pickup credibility, and credibility is what turns curiosity into actual sales. If this truck gains momentum, it could force competitors into a brutal price war they're not prepared for. Cutting prices means cutting margins, and many brands have built their entire business model around high-margin trucks. That's a dangerous position to be in when a low-cost alternative starts stealing attention, because suddenly, discounts don't look generous, they look desperate. And as rumors start swirling about expanded markets, localized production, and potential partnerships, the implications grow even bigger. Because if a truck like this ever lands in a market dominated by overpriced pickups, it doesn't just compete, it resets expectations entirely, and once expectations change, there's no going back. Especially as buyers start realizing that the future of trucks might not be about more screens, more software, or more subscriptions, but about something far more basic, something the industry quietly abandoned. And that's where the next part of this story starts to get even more uncomfortable for the big players as we dig deeper into what this truck really represents for the future of the pickup truck itself. Because this Foton isn't just a vehicle, it's a statement against everything modern trucks have become. For years, buyers were told that rising prices were unavoidable, that safety tech, emissions rules, and digital features made cheap trucks impossible. And yet here comes a bare-bones, compliant, functional pickup, proving that narrative was never entirely true. This truck is built around the idea of ownership, not leasing, not subscriptions, not software updates that lock features behind paywalls. You buy it, you use it, you own it. That alone feels revolutionary in an industry obsessed with recurring revenue. No monthly fees, no app dependency, no forced upgrades, just a mechanical tool meant to earn its keep every single day. Another reason this reveal hits so hard is timing. Construction costs are up, small businesses are under pressure, and independent workers are looking for ways to survive without taking on massive debt. A cheap pickup isn't a luxury in that environment, it's economic relief. That's why this truck resonates so strongly with real-world buyers instead of influencers and reviewers chasing headlines. Even the safety approach tells a story. Instead of expensive semi-autonomous systems, Foton focused on core safety fundamentals: solid structure, airbags, stability control, and braking systems that do the job without inflating the price. It's a reminder that safety doesn't automatically require complexity, it requires smart engineering and honest priorities. What's also fascinating is how this truck challenges Western assumptions about what consumers want. For decades, automakers believed buyers demanded bigger, heavier, and more expensive trucks. But global markets have proven the opposite. Millions of people simply want a compact, efficient, affordable pickup that fits narrow streets, tight budgets, and real work. Foton is building for that reality, not a marketing fantasy. The silence from major truck brands is telling. No dismissive comments, no confident counter-announcements, just quiet observation. That's usually what happens when a product lands too close to a pressure point. Because responding means admitting there's demand they ignored, and ignoring it risks losing relevance in entire segments. And once you start pulling on that thread, the implications go beyond trucks. If affordability becomes a competitive weapon again, everything changes. SUVs, vans, commercial vehicles, even entry-level passenger cars suddenly face the same uncomfortable question. Why are these vehicles so expensive when cheaper alternatives clearly work? This Foton pickup is forcing that conversation whether the industry likes it or not. It's exposing how far automakers drifted from serving buyers and how comfortable they became serving balance sheets instead. And as more images, specs, and real-world usage start surfacing, the pressure only intensifies because the more people see this truck doing actual work in the real world, the harder it becomes to dismiss it as a niche product or a regional oddity. And that brings us to the most dangerous part of this reveal, the part that could genuinely disrupt the entire market. Because once affordability proves profitable at scale, it opens the door to something the industry desperately tried to avoid. And that's a complete rethink of how trucks are designed, priced, and sold. And as we start to explore how this could influence future models, production strategies, and even government policies, the story takes another sharp turn into territory that few automakers are prepared to deal with as this affordable pickup begins to rewrite the rules of the game in real time. Because once governments and regulators notice that low-cost, compliant trucks can exist without sacrificing basic safety or emission standards, the excuse playbook starts falling apart. Suddenly, lobbying narratives about unavoidable costs don't hold the same weight when a manufacturer proves otherwise in the open market. This is where the domino effect starts. Local manufacturers feel pressure, import brands feel exposed. Dealers start asking uncomfortable questions about inventory sitting unsold. And buyers, once silent, start demanding options that don't trap them in 5 to 7-year loans. That shift in mindset is far more powerful than any single truck launch. Foton also benefits from something legacy brands quietly lost: trust in mechanical simplicity. People are tired of trucks that shut down over sensor failures, limp modes, or software glitches. This pickup's stripped-down approach sends a message that reliability doesn't need to be complicated, and in many parts of the world, that message carries more weight than horsepower numbers or touchscreen size. There's also a cultural element here that can't be ignored. In many markets, trucks are tools first and status symbols last. Foton leaned into that identity unapologetically. No oversized grills screaming for attention, no luxury branding pretending to be rugged, just a working vehicle that looks like it belongs on a job site, not outside a steakhouse. As production ramps up, the real test will be scale. And that's exactly where this becomes truly dangerous for competitors. If Foton can produce this truck in high volume while keeping costs down, it proves that efficiency and affordability can coexist. That's a lesson many manufacturers unlearned when profits became the only metric that mattered. Meanwhile, used truck markets are already feeling the pressure. When new affordable options appear, inflated used prices start collapsing fast. Buyers who were settling for high mileage, beat-up trucks suddenly have a reason to walk away, and that ripple spreads quickly through auctions, dealerships, and financing arms tied to residual values. And let's not forget fleet operators. Governments, utilities, and logistics companies don't care about leather seats or ambient lighting. They care about cost per mile, uptime, and ease of repair. A truck like this checks every one of those boxes, and if fleets start adopting it, the validation alone could accelerate its impact exponentially. The industry likes to pretend disruption only comes from tech startups and electric vehicles, but history shows that real disruption often comes from simplicity. From someone asking why things got so expensive in the first place. This Foton pickup asks that question out loud, and the silence in response is growing louder by the day. Because as awareness spreads and buyers realize what's been possible all along, the pressure builds toward a breaking point. Either automakers adapt, or they double down on pricing strategies that fewer people can afford. And standing in the middle of that tension is this unassuming, super cheap pickup quietly doing the one thing that terrifies the industry the most: proving that the market was never asking for more, it was asking for less. And as this reality sinks in, the next phase of this disruption starts unfolding in ways that could permanently alter how trucks are built, sold, and valued, especially as we begin to see how this single reveal could influence global trade, manufacturing strategy, and even national automotive priorities. Because once a low-cost pickup starts crossing borders, it forces countries to confront a hard truth about their own industries. Are domestic manufacturers serving real needs? Or are they trapped in a high-margin bubble that ignores the majority of buyers? This is where things get political without trying to be. Affordable vehicles are economic tools. They enable small businesses, agriculture, infrastructure, and mobility. When a company like Foton delivers a truck that lowers the barrier to entry, it doesn't just compete with other brands, it competes with policy decisions, labor costs, and supply chain inefficiencies that made vehicles unaffordable in the first place. What's especially striking is how this truck aligns with markets that Western automakers increasingly overlook. Rural buyers, developing economies, and cost-sensitive regions don't want watered-down luxury trucks. They want durability and independence. Foton is building for that buyer, and in doing so, they're quietly capturing loyalty that lasts generations. There's also a manufacturing lesson hidden here. This pickup shows what happens when platforms are shared intelligently, parts are standardized, and unnecessary complexity is stripped away early in the design process. Instead of adding features and cutting costs later, Foton engineered cost control from the beginning. That's a mindset shift many legacy brands struggle to adopt because it clashes with their premium positioning. As images of this truck in real-world conditions start circulating, loaded with tools, hauling supplies, covered in dirt instead of wax, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. It doesn't need influencer marketing. It markets itself by existing. Every job site, every rural road, every fleet yard becomes a moving billboard for what affordability actually looks like. And that's when the panic phase usually starts. Competitors scramble to announce future budget models, concept vehicles, or vague promises of affordable options coming soon. But buyers have heard that before. What they're seeing now is something tangible, something available, something that doesn't require waiting 3 years or paying extra for basic features. This is also where brand narratives start collapsing. For years, companies claimed their trucks were expensive because they were over-engineered for safety and capability. But when a simpler truck meets most real-world needs at a fraction of the price, those stories lose credibility fast. The conversation shifts from admiration to skepticism. The Foton pickup isn't trying to dominate headlines, it's doing something more dangerous. It's changing expectations quietly. And once expectations shift, even loyal buyers start questioning their next purchase. That hesitation alone can slow sales, force incentives, and destabilize pricing across entire segments. And as this pressure continues building, the question stops being whether this truck is good enough and becomes why the rest of the industry chose to abandon this space in the first place. Because the moment affordability proves sustainable and scalable, the floodgates open, and what comes next could redefine not just the pickup market, but the future direction of the global auto industry as we move deeper into a phase where value, not hype, starts driving decisions. And that leads directly into the next layer of this story where consumer behavior starts shifting faster than anyone expected. Because once buyers realize they don't have to accept inflated prices, the psychology of the market changes overnight. People stop rushing to dealerships, they stop stretching budgets, they start waiting, comparing, and demanding justification for every extra dollar, and that hesitation alone is enough to shake sales forecasts across the industry. This is exactly why affordable vehicles have always been a threat to high-margin strategies. They don't just attract buyers, they empower them. A buyer with options is a buyer who can say no, and Foton just gave millions of people that power again. That leverage didn't exist when every pickup on the lot started at prices that felt impossible to escape. Another overlooked factor is repair culture. In many regions, independent mechanics and local workshops are the backbone of transportation. Trucks overloaded with proprietary systems and locked software kill that ecosystem. This Foton pickup brings it back to life. Parts availability, mechanical access, and repairability suddenly matter again. And that's a massive advantage in places where downtime costs money every single day. There's also a generational angle. Younger buyers aren't chasing chrome and leather the way previous generations did. They're dealing with higher living costs, tighter credit, and less disposable income. A simple, cheap pickup isn't a downgrade to them. It's a smart move. And once a brand earns loyalty from that generation, it's incredibly hard to displace later. As more markets take notice, the conversation shifts from, "Is this truck too basic?" to, "Why isn't everyone offering something like this?" That's when copycats emerge. But copying affordability is much harder than copying design. It requires reworking supply chains, labor structures, dealer models, and profit expectations. That's not something you can fix with a facelift or a press release. What makes Foton's move even smarter is how it sidesteps direct confrontation. They're not attacking competitors by name. They're not positioning this as a luxury killer. They're simply offering a product the market clearly wants and letting the comparison do the damage. That kind of disruption is slow, quiet, and devastating. And the more this truck proves itself in real-world use, the harder it becomes for critics to dismiss it as low quality or temporary. Durability builds reputation mile by mile, load by load. Every successful day on the job erodes skepticism and strengthens the case for affordable simplicity. This is the phase where the industry usually reacts too late. By the time major brands adjust, buyers have already changed their expectations. Discounts feel like desperation.